Vaccine passports still aren't technically a thing, but they're getting pretty close to it in Washington, with vaccine-only sections now allowed at sporting venues.
They'll have specific gates that they'll come in. There will be, areas where they can be without social distancing.
While here in Oregon, we're just now letting fans into Blazers games for the first time in more than a year, after Dame had something to say about it on Twitter. And 6 months now after the city cleared a huge homeless camp in a southeast Portland park, it's back. And it doesn't sound like it's going anywhere anytime soon.
How I would describe what's happening now, quite frankly, is a lose-lose position.
Here's the story.
Some complex issues. This is the show for it. Where else would you go? Thanks for being with us. This is the story. It is a Friday. Why not end the week and go into the weekend talking about really important, stressful stuff, shall we? I'm Dan Haggerty. Thanks for being with us. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. Use that hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Let's get started. And our big story tonight is that small paper card they give you when you get vaccinated. It's meant to be a medical record, but it could turn out to be much more. It could turn into a vaccine passport. Why is everything so dramatic nowadays? Why can't we just call it a vaccine card? No, it has to be a passport. Like getting into Fuddruckers would be the same as visiting a foreign nation. Either way, I'm betting something tells me you already have your mind made up on vaccine passports, because you probably already have your mind made up on the vaccine. There are mostly two crowds out there: people who are vaccinated and want to party again and think these passports are the fastest way to do it, and people who don't want to get the vaccine and also want to party again, but really don't want to have to choose between the vaccine and partying. So tonight, I'm going to introduce you to me, a person whose idea of a party is to delve deeply into state and federal law. So let's start with Oregon's stance on vaccine passports. We asked Governor Brown a yes or no question. Does she support restaurants using them? She said this.
I think what I would say is that our vaccine distribution efforts, while fairly effective and efficient, have not been as equitable as I would like. And we are working hard to close the vaccine gaps that exist amongst our communities of color. And we've made good progress in the last 4 weeks. However, we still have a lot of vulnerable Oregonians that haven't gotten a vaccine yet.
You may have noticed she didn't directly answer the question. I'm as shocked as you are, but it wasn't a no. Okay, I can say, though, a lot of you have been a little more specific with your opinions on the topic. I get emails every single night. Here's one from Chris. The elephant in the room with this discussion is vaccine passports. While I do not think there should be laws requiring them, I do think private businesses should be able to require them. I'd be inclined to frequent businesses if they displayed a sign or advertised that they only allowed vaccinated customers into their businesses and restaurants. Well, let me just tell you, one of the main reasons you haven't seen that happen is pretty simple, actually. Restaurants are just trying to survive. I mean, even in the low-risk counties, the indoor dining is capped at 50%. They can't afford to exclude people. But what if they could? What if they could afford to exclude people? What if the governor made exceptions for businesses that wanted to use vaccine passports, like, say, Washington, where Governor Jay Inslee is definitely dipping his toes into the passport pool? He gave the okay for religious organizations to increase capacity with vaccinated-only sections. And he's cool with the Mariners adding a vaccinated section at the ballpark. For just $10, you can sit next to another human being you do not know if you can prove both of you are vaccinated.
They'll have specific gates that they'll come in. There will be, areas where they can be without social distancing, and areas where they will be with the rest of the fans where they will still practice social distancing. But no matter what, everybody still has to wear a mask.
So let's just recap that policy real quick. You use your vaccine passport. Hi, welcome to the game. Now you're at the game. You're vaccinated. Everybody around you is vaccinated. You don't have to social distance. Feel free to high five after a strikeout, maybe hug it out after a home run, but you still have to wear your mask. Why? I'm not sure. I don't really understand the rules anymore. But let's not get sidetracked by masks, okay? Even though it's tempting. Instead, let's stick with vaccine passports, which seem like they are most definitely becoming a thing. Hundreds of universities across the country are requiring students to have one before returning to in-person classes. In Oregon, that's Lewis and Clark, OSU, Portland State, University of Portland, and Willamette. In Washington, it's Central Washington, Evergreen, Pacific Lutheran, Seattle U, University of Washington, WSU, Western, and Whitman. And it's not just the students. It's also the people who work there, the employees. Again, I'll say it again, I'm sure most of you already have your mind made up on all of this. But I would like to address a specific group, the people who think that vaccine passports are illegal, that they cannot happen, all right? Well, I have to tell you, you're wrong. The government and businesses can use Supreme Court precedent for mandatory vaccines and passports based on a case from 1905 involving smallpox. But for all of you people out there who are furious by what I just said, don't worry, because there's an easy way out of it. Religious and medical exemptions. I talked to law professor Paul Diller from Willamette University about it today.
So it's really two sets of laws. The first would be federal public accommodation laws, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which we think of as primarily desegregating lunch counters in the South and other institutions in the South. But that's still on the books, and it still protects people against religious discrimination in certain public accommodations. Then there's also the Americans with Disabilities Act that was passed in 1990 by Congress and signed by President Bush, the senior, that was designed to make public spaces like malls and restaurants and stadiums more open to folks with disabilities.
And those laws have two layers. There's the federal laws and even stricter state laws here in Oregon on both those topics. He says, in his opinion, all it would take is one lawsuit, and the vaccine passport thing could come crashing down. Professor Diller's great. He honestly is. I call him all the time. I email him with him all the time on these types of things. He has great, interesting looks at these topics. For instance, let's consider all those school teachers who have to show their vaccine passport to go back to work. Well, what if they don't have one? What if they have a justifiable exemption from getting a vaccine? They have to prove that to their boss. Should they have to share that information that is protected and personal?
Most employees don't talk to their employer about their religion. And most employees don't usually talk about any health conditions they have in the workplace. But in the process of, in this sort of first ever or first in a long time requirement of being vaccinated, they may have to reveal that information. And so the question I have is...
It's a complex topic. I know that. I could go on. I have more stuff to say about it, but this show is only a half an hour. We have other stuff to do. But let me know if you have questions. If you think I should take this in a different direction, something else I should consider. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. You know how to get a hold of me. Though I will say, there appears to be an easier way to deal with all of this. Just go to Dame. Hours before the latest restrictions in Multnomah County were reduced, it looked like the Blazers would still have empty stands for their game. So Dame tweeted our quote of the day. And I quote, "So we gon' be the only damn team in the whole league with no fans." And like that, a few hours later, they got the news. Starting tonight, the Moda Center will be at 10% capacity. No passport needed. Dame got it done. He got it done. Maybe it was also the dip in Oregon's hospitalizations, but I really think Dame sealed the deal. I'm sure of it. Let's talk about some vaccines. Let's count, shall we? We like to count these ones. More than 1.97 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose of the vaccine. So we're close to 2 million. We're closing in on a big number here. The majority of those people have actually got their second dose as well. We're nearly at 47% of the state's population with people with at least one shot. In Washington, more than 3.71 million people have gotten at least their first dose, which works out to be about 48% of the state's population, nearly half the population there with the first shot. Now, I want to follow up on a story that we covered, let's say, 6 months ago. I know it's been a while, but if you live anywhere close to Laurelhurst Park, you'd probably say, what is time, really? Because our neighborhood seems like it's always looked like this at this point. Tents and RVs still lining the park, just like they did in November when the city cleared everyone out. Well, now campers are back, and they've got backup. Activists, they show up there every single day to cook people food and protest the city's practice of clearing homeless campers. So what to do? The activists say clearing out these camps would be inhumane. Campers say services are harder and harder to get during this pandemic, and we know Portland has a housing shortage. While at the same time, neighbors, frankly, are terrified, and they don't know where else to turn. So what's next? Here's Maggie Vespa.
I don't want to be here no more. It's been too long to deal with an environment as chaotic as this.
No one we met living along Laurelhurst Park thinks this is working. That includes Christopher Kirby, who's been homeless since he was 13.
I don't know how to live like you.
But whether it's working or not, this is what's happening. 6 months after the city cleared campers from this Southeast Portland neighborhood, dozens are back. And this time, activists followed.
We wouldn't be here if people didn't ask us to be here.
Stop the Sweeps is one of a few groups here. They make campers food and vow to, in their minds, provide protection from the city.
You know, this is a collaborative effort with the residents and with the organizations to protect them against the sweeps.
The problem is many here are battling addiction and mental health issues, and this setup has bred chaos. Neighbors are exhausted and afraid.
People know our names.
Yeah.
And we worry about that. That's our only concern.
One couple only wanted to talk via phone for fear of retribution. They live near the camp and say they've endured threats, theft, and attempted break-ins. They hear screams at night. Early Monday morning, they took this photo after a tent exploded.
There were those propane tanks next to the fire. It was a huge, it was massive fire.
Campers say it was an accident and no one was hurt.
There's many people who want to make this a housed against unhoused situation, and that is just simply not truthful or accurate.
TJ Browning is the safety chair of the Neighborhood Association.
This situation victimizes the housed and the unhoused.
She calls this a lose-lose situation and puts all the blame on City Hall. She thinks city officials don't get how frightening this has been and how much people in this camp need serious help. Here's one story she told us.
We had a child come out of their front door into their front yard. A woman, mental health issues, I understand. I have empathy and compassion. However, she saw that child, came running across the parking strip to him, and was screaming at him, "I'm going to kill you! I'm going to kill you!"
After months of neighbors submitting complaints and documenting concerns, KGW learned of a possible breakthrough. A meeting Friday afternoon between the city and activists here. A rep confirms staff from all 5 city commissioners' offices were there, adding the city has flagged multiple safety and sanitation concerns that warrant clearing the camp. Granted, Browning wishes the neighborhood could have also been at Friday's meeting.
We're not invited.
Still, activists said these conversations could lead to campers leaving voluntarily. In short, Benjamin Donlin told us amid a booming housing crisis and a pandemic, campers feel safe living like this, but it doesn't have to be here. Give them land to build organized tiny house villages, he says, and people will gladly move.
I think that if the city allowed for people to autonomously build up their own communities, that you would see a lot of unhoused people provide for themselves in really strong ways.
KGW is waiting on the results of that meeting. So are neighbors, who will remind you the city has promised to take care of this before. Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
So check your calendars. We have Mother's Day this weekend. If right now you're looking over at your wife smiling like you didn't forget when you actually did, just make sure to get rush shipping, okay? It's more expensive, but it will save you in the long run. Today, I shared this picture of my mom on Facebook. That's Barb, or Nana, to her grandsons. Little tidbit about her. She calls or texts me at 9:01 a.m. Eastern Time every single year on April 29th, the exact time I was born. And she says the exact same thing every time. It's like that scene from City Slickers. I love it. And it's one of the many reasons I adore her. I asked you to share some photos and some thoughts about your mom, and you guys delivered. It was great. So we're going to share some of those throughout the show tonight.
A lot of you have been asking us, what's going to stop people from rioting in the streets? Well, maybe getting hit with some federal charges will help. And the Portland Police Bureau is becoming more and more of an outlier when it comes to body cams, even though the feds are pushing for them to wear them. When the story continues.
A lot of wonderful moms out there we're paying homage to tonight. Yeah, it's not until Sunday, but we're not back on air until Monday. We're not going to be able to show all of them. There were dozens today on my Facebook feed, but if you want to share yours or see some of the other wonderful women in this community, get on my Facebook page, check it out, leave a comment, leave a picture, something like that. And thank you to everybody who leaves comments every night here on The Story about the content that we do on the show, what you see happening in this community. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. It really drives this show. Let us know what you want to see us cover. Now, I have heard from a lot of you with different opinions about what our leaders should do to stop the rioting that's been happening on and off now for how long? A past year or more. Some of you think people need to be tougher with these rioters and these protesters when it comes to the charges. Well, we just saw that happen in one case. Last month, police arrested a 19-year-old U of O student accused of setting fire to the Portland Police Union building. But now she's facing federal arson charges. FBI agents showed up to Alma Raven Guido's home this week and took her into custody. Police say an informant helped identify her as one of the people who poured a flammable liquid on the Union building before that fire broke out. I talked to investigative reporter Kyle Laboshi about what these new charges mean.
Okay, Kyle Laboshi joining us now. Kyle, tell me exactly how this is a federal case, why it is.
The federal hook is there's an interstate component to the crime. The feds are basing this off the interpretation that unions, in this case, the police union, affect interstate commerce. And we've seen this tactic before. I covered a case several years ago where a guy was charged federally with arson after throwing a Molotov cocktail at a Portland police car. In that case, prosecutors argued the patrol car was used to transport inmates across state lines. So again, that interstate component.
Interesting. So she previously faced state charges. Will she be tried both in state and federal court?
So I looked just a few minutes ago. She's still facing the state charges and the federal charges, but in all likelihood, those state charges will go away. She'll just face the federal charges.
For somebody, if you were in her shoes, is one worse than the other? Is there a big difference between the two?
As far as the penalty, yeah. So federal conviction for arson is punishable by up to 20 years in federal prison, a mandatory minimum of 5 years. So that's a pretty stiff sentence compared to the state charges. And really, the feds are looking to send a strong message here and deter others from doing the same thing.
Got it. All right, Kyle Laboshi, thank you.
Speaking of the federal charges and the federal government, we've been talking a lot about this back and forth between Portland Police and the U.S. Department of Justice about the Bureau's use of force policies. The city just sent this letter to the DOJ in response to a warning from the feds that they'd better shape up. It's long, this letter that they just sent in, 40 pages. I'm going to be honest with you, we just got it. We haven't had a ton of time to look through it yet, so we're going to get deeper into this story next week. But in the meantime, I want to talk about another letter. This one was sent to Portland police from the feds a couple of days ago, again talking about a bunch of issues that they have with the Bureau. The Oregonian got a copy of it, and we noticed this little section about body cams. It says the city should consider the consistently high-quality evidence that body-worn cameras can supply investigations of misconduct allegations across the spectrum, from rudeness to bias to force. The thing is, we know both the Portland Police Bureau and the Portland Police Union want these cameras. Here's what the deputy chief told Kyle Laboshi in February.
What do you see as the benefit of having body cams?
I think it's a few things. Number one, there's a very big benefit in terms of transparency. And having a body-worn camera will, in any incident, can provide us with answers to a lot of questions.
Why don't Portland police officers have body cams?
It's a combination of reasons, but really the biggest one is it boils down to the cost.
Funding, money. It's apparently been a very big obstacle. The city has gone back and forth with plans to fund body cams for years now. Most recently, last year, you may remember, we were supposed to launch a pilot program here, but the pandemic hit, the economy crashed, and the funding got pulled. Now, City Council is considering the mayor's new budget proposal, but body cams aren't on the list. And even if they were, we know at least one city commissioner likely would not be on board. When we asked Commissioner Joanne Hardesty about body cams a couple of months ago, she said, "I'm reluctant to make an expensive investment in body-worn cameras because they have failed to provide accountability to other police departments and have not reduced police use of force." So it's not looking like PPB is going to get these cameras anytime soon. But the department is becoming more and more of an outlier in this conversation, and not just among other large police departments in the country, but locally. Right here today, Vancouver police announced they're starting a body cam program in 2022. They've considered this for a while, but in February, the Clark County Prosecutor's Office called for all local police to start wearing these cameras. It came after Clark County deputies shot and killed two black men, Kevin Peterson Jr. and Genoa Donald. Those two shootings are still under investigation. Later in February, county councilors gave the go-ahead for the sheriff and the sheriff's office for these body cameras. And just yesterday, Tigard Police, they announced they're expanding body cameras department-wide. Only certain officers had worn them up until now, like K-9 officers and school resource officers. And yes, it's going to cost money, but they got approval from City Council to move forward.
It adds corroborating evidence for us, so it helps shed light on the occurrences, what we're seeing, what people are telling us, how everybody's interacting. Being able to show from our point of view how quickly these things happen, and sometimes we don't have the opportunity to achieve the ends that we all want to see. We have to react to what's occurring, and we have to save lives.
We should also mention back in January, Tigard Police shot and killed a man named Jacob McDuff. His family says he was having a mental health crisis at the time. This week, the Washington County DA asked the Oregon Attorney General's office to get involved in that investigation. All right, keep sending in your questions and your comments, maybe your concerns, your critiques, anything you want. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. I'm going to read a few when we finish the story. Next. All right, got some comments and questions to close out the story for tonight and for the week. Natalie Toft on Twitter saying, "Hey Dan, brave of you to say Fuddruckers without hesitation on live TV. I would have had a terrified dyslexic moment. Never stop living on the edge. Respect." I nearly stumbled over the word edge, so you're probably right. It was a risk. I said it twice. And let's end with this tonight. Dennis writing in on our email saying, "If you guys don't have time on the story, you got to tell the newsroom to show highlights later tonight of Friday's amazing U of O Ducks softball game." Well, we don't have to wait, Dennis. Let's take a look right now. Thanks for being with us this week. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Shut up.